I begged and pleaded to take him off the Sabril after 2 years because I was like, I don't know who he is without medication.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to take him off. And they're like, well, if we take him off, we might not be able to get him back on again. And I'm like, I'm willing to risk it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, I hear you. It's, everybody has a different take on that. And, so you got them to, well, not that they can stop you, but, they were supportive in some way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he went several months without seizures. Of course, by this time we're entering middle school and there was a whole new slew, this is the behaviors were just getting crazy.
And what kind of behaviors were you seeing?
The behaviors we were getting, I won't say they were crazy, but the behaviors we were getting were more of a refusal to do the work or write. And teachers, I had teachers come to me in the lunchroom when we first started school one year. And she came to me and she says, you're Matthew's mom. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know who she was. I never met her. She says, well, he's not a pleasure to have in my class. And I'm like,
are you kidding me? She led with that.
She led with that. And I didn't want the confrontation right there in the lunchroom.
No, I get it.
I was here to have
so offsetting.
And we were a few days away from an IEP. So I said, well, we're going to have that IEP meeting. We'll discuss it then. That's all. What else was I going to say?
Of course.
So the next teacher comes up to me, who I'd never met either. She says,
oh my goodness.
She says, are you Matthew's mom? And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? So she says, I need to know how to reach your child. I need
a better approach.
To know, what do you do at home to gain his attention, engage him? And I started bawling my eyes out.
I could feel that. Yeah.
She was like, I'm so sorry. What did I say? And I'm like, no, it wasn't you.
That's like a really compassionate way of approaching somebody there.
Yeah.
But still.
She did great. And so, like I said, we had the benefit of supportive teachers in elementary school, and some did everything they could and some balked at requests, and the teacher who approached me and said he wasn't a pleasure to have in her class, ultimately it was because she was trying to make him copy off of the board. And he challenged her, he's like, well, I'm not doing it, so, and she didn't like that because it didn't set a good example. If he's not going to listen to me, then nobody else is going to listen to me.
The tide is going to turn.
But we fought that because of where his tumor was in his brain, the left frontal lobe. We tried to explain that, he's got fatigue and he can't copy off the board. It's too much for him. You need to provide him with notes. And so, we kind of navigated people in that direction going forward, was provide notes and you won't have these issues of him balking at your requests. And so by the end of the year, she changed her tune.
Oh, good.
She said, he even gave me a hug and everything. And I'm like, that's how he is, he knows. He figured out who was there to help him and who wasn't. And if you were not there to help him, you got
behavior that, that's always been the way it is for my son. Like if there's an aide over the course of his education that there's a conflict with, I know that there's a reason why. And it's not because he's just doesn't like the person. There's something going on there. So
in sixth grade, we had a lot of issues with substitute teachers who didn't know how to handle him. And there were incidents that I never knew existed until I did a records review of his records after all our middle school incidents. And I guess we'll come back to that.
I think I remember you sharing some of that with me down in Dallas. So
but that one sixth grade teacher, they wanted him to be able to read content and derive a meaning from the content. It wasn't, find the answer in the reading. It was derive a meaning from what you read. And everything was multiple choice. And so we had to push to get page numbers on where he could find the answers. And the teacher took the time and made the page numbers and everything that we requested. And he still couldn't do it. He couldn't derive a meaning from reading. This is sixth grade and he still has a first grade reading level. So we didn't do the work that we were supposed to do at home. He couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't do it. So she called me at home and was just laying into me and lashing at me for not doing it because she took all that time to do those page numbers. And I was crying by the end of the call. And
Oh my goodness.
I just said, I can't have this discussion with you anymore. I can't. I should not feel this intimidated.
No way.
By my child's challenges, and you're unable to help him.
Yeah, it's not on you.
You know, we're done. And so I went to school still crying with the book and the paper, went to the principal and said, if this teacher is doing this to me, what is she doing to my child?
Wow.
You know,
wow.
If she can do this to me, an adult who is able to comprehend and process this, what is she doing to my child? I have no doubt my child is giving her a difficult time in her class if this is what she's doing. So I gave him the book. I gave him the questions. I said, tell me the answer. And he couldn't find it either.
Wow.
So I proved my point.
Mama bear.
Yeah, this was not going to work either.
Right.
So,
no, and it's really well done.
Yeah, trial and error. I mean, that's all we can do.
Oh, I know. I can relate.
Yeah, she was convinced that he had to be able to have this skill to go to middle school. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. He's not going to have this skill.
Right.
But when we got to middle school, it was just a whole other animal. It was, the bottom fell out, all I can say.
Yeah.
And it was gradual. The behaviors built up gradual with time, and he started having seizures again. And of course he has very unusual display of seizures, whether it's an absent seizure or a partial paralysis type of seizure.
Oh, yeah.
And to them, that was not a normal seizure. And then he would sleep afterwards. And they started to say he was using his seizures to manipulate them.
Now I remember.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That was the word
can't even imagine.
they used. Yeah.
Manipulate.
He was using the seizures to manipulate them and avoid the work. And, you know, I didn't know how to combat that type of attitude, because you can't change somebody's mind if that's the mindset they have. So I approached Dina, of course, and she attended our meetings by conference call and everything, and provided the mentor program to them, and had already provided them the educational guide for teachers on tuberous sclerosis and the behavior guide that was out at the time. I believe it was called a behavior guide for behaviors associated with tuberous sclerosis.
Yes.
We didn't have TAN. It wasn't yet.
No TAN.
No TAN at the time. Not yet. It was just emerging.
We all knew it was there. There was just no name for it.
Yeah. And so when, I would be called in to talk to the principal because they were having to take him out of class because he was
so
making
it was
noises.
Just kind of getting worse.
Yes, it was continuing to progress, and he would make noises or disrupt the class, and he was not volatile at all in school.
That's good.
And so we had never really seen him volatile either, but if they went to physically remove him from the classroom, he would dodge them. He would.
Well, you think?
Yeah, you just physically don't put your hands on him because that's invading his space, and he knows that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he was just fighting for his human rights.
Yeah. He didn't know
instinctively.
Instinctively. So, yeah.
I think that's all the behavior is. They can't get it out, so it comes out sideways, and people think it's, malicious in some way.
Yeah. I mean, he could write a 4-page paragraph. By this time, I had a private, I hate to skip around because I forget.
No, it's okay. You can, it's all fine.
By this time, we had done a private neuropsych evaluation, full-scale neuropsych and educational evaluation at our expense as well.
You had to pay for it?
Not knowing that I could have asked the school to do it, but so we did it, and the best thing I ever did, though.
Oh, those are wonderful. We got
best thing I ever did, because I had a full understanding, and finally that struggle with writing had a name. It's called dysgraphia. So I didn't know it had a name all that time, and of course that changes the way the school handles these situations because he's got dysgraphia. It's not just a reluctance to write.
Right, and you have this document from that you can.
And he was, of course, finally diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, on the Asperger's side of things, because he was pretty
high functioning.
And one of their big arguments was they wanted him to write a 4-paragraph essay, which he could do, not every day. You couldn't ask him to do it every day.
Well, who
You know,
wants to do that every day?
he's got dysgraphia, you know, so he's like exhausting. He's like, I
That's
did
really
it yesterday. I don't need to do this again, you know. That's his mindset.
Yeah, it's not helping him.
Didn't I already show you I could do this yesterday? He was very much a kid that didn't like to repeat lessons. He didn't like to repeat tasks.
Yep.
And once I've mastered it, that's it. Let's move on. You know?
Well, in some ways, it's a very logical way of progressing.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
yes.
He's too smart for his own good in this education system, I sense.
In a sense, yes. But they kept trying to put him on homebound for the behaviors
What's
of having
that?
to remove them. Just homebound is where you get instruction at home. This teacher
Okay.
comes to the home. Medical homebound, as they might have called it, which is the most common thing. But they wanted to put him on homebound just for behaviors.
Huh.
And I was like, well, no, you won't put him on homebound because of behaviors. Because number one, you know, of course, now I know that's a change in placement for behavior, and you can't do that.
Right.
So,
right.
But I just went at them. I said, well, you've never accessed any of the resources I've provided you.
Oh,
You haven't
good.
used the mentor program. You haven't used anything that I've provided. So until you make the effort, until you make the effort, we're here to stay.
Yep.
You know? So our challenges continued, and I felt like the parent with the target on the back, I guess, because from it just push came to shove, and it didn't get any better.
Yeah. So it just kept, and I'm sure for Matthew, it just.
Yeah. By his second year in middle school, they were withdrawing him from the classroom without notifying me and placing him in the adjustment center, and the adjustment center would be equivalent to in-school suspension. But they weren't doing it for disciplinary sake. They were doing it because they just didn't want him in the classroom. And so he finally let me know, well, I went to the adjustment center today, and I'm like, oh, really? Why? And he's like, oh, and I went in there on this day and this day and this day.
Oh my goodness, you must have been like temperature rising.
He's got a remarkable memory for these things. So he knew the exact dates and everything he had been in there. So, you know, I wrote one of my little letters and said, I understand he's being withdrawn from class. And can we not do that anymore? So it stopped. And then they finally put a behavior plan in place and everything.
Holy mackerel.
I had spent 2 years trying to get that as well. But ultimately, he was not permitted to go to a basketball game at the end of the school period. There was a activity at the end of the school day. This is still middle school, second year of middle school, halfway through the second year of middle school, and 8th grade. So he was not permitted to go to a basketball game at the end of the school day activity because he wouldn't go to his last class. And of course, he said he was going to have a seizure. So of course, you know, he's manipulating them. So,
oh my goodness. See, we have the opposite problem. Well, because my son has had, you know, grand mal seizure. So now everything is like, they're worried about every little thing that might be a seizure.
Well, at this point, they were not worried about every little thing that was a seizure.
I gotcha. So it was on the other end of the.
He was still manipulating them. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so he was not going to be permitted to go to the basketball game, but nobody communicated that with him. They put him in the office. The librarian, who had no experience with his IEP or behavior plan, took him to the library to play video games on the computer because they knew that's what he liked to do. But the basketball game was right across the hall from the library, and he could hear it.
But he wanted to go to the game.
He wanted to go to the game, and nobody told him he wasn't going to the game.
Oh, boy.
And so
that's just criminal.
Yeah, it set up a chain of events that just,
so dishonest.
It led one thing to the other. And so, he did not go to the computer immediately when he got in the library. He just did a U-turn and went right for the door to go to the basketball game. And she barricaded him and didn't let him leave. And she was calling for help, and the assistant principal showed up and helped, and they further barricaded him. And he finally escaped them and got into the gym. Now he's shoeless by now. So he's just in his socks. And I know most of this stuff because I was able to see the video after another big fight. But anyway, we'll get to that. He ultimately ended up being pulled from the gym by the principal who also, with the assistance of an untrained substitute teacher, restrained him.
Which is all illegal.
And no, it is legal though.
It is.
It is legal to
on a kid